Well, it's going to get warm today. It's a bit gloomy at the moment, lots of cloud cover, but it's fairly early, so we're looking forward to some sunshine this afternoon. In the meantime, eat some things for lunch: carrots, cabbage, runner beans, probably the last runner beans, and some potatoes. Let's go. Well, the beans, they're pretty much over. You can tell when they're going to be stringy. They get a sort of ridged, hard surface to them. Let's see if I can find one here to show you. Shouldn't be too difficult, really. Where are we? Here we go. So you can get these really sort of rough sides to the beans, and I know for sure that they're going to be stringy and not really worth eating. But of course, these are great pods for seed for next year, and you can see the size of the beans in these. They're really getting going. And the good thing about ZAR, which I've said many times, is that the actual seed within the pod is edible, a bit like a butter bean, and it makes a great meal. And you can dry them and use them like a pulse during the winter months. And there's plenty of pods on here that will be used in that way. And of course, any that you keep will be seed for next year. And it looks like I'll have a shed load of seed for next year. And that's a good thing, because I always grow this bean and I intend to continue growing it in the years to come. So this is what I've just harvested, and most of these are quite tender. You have to be a bit selective, and there may be the odd one that's got a bit too much of that ridging on. We'll probably discard that, but there's plenty in there that will be good, and we'll get a good meal out of those. So, onto the cabbage. Well, we're getting down to just 4 pots remaining of the potatoes. Still getting great crops out of them. That's out of 2 pots, and saving the soil as usual. And this area, I think I might be clearing this out later today and getting the soil ready for next year. Well, they say make hay while the sun shines, and I'm certainly going to do that. So I had a couple of these purple sprouting broccoli that didn't have a stake. I found one metal stake when I was clearing out my compost bins, and I've located another one. So I'm going to get that into the ground, and I think I'm going to swap those over actually, because that's just a little bit too close to eye level at the path. So we'll stick this one down in here and get this one in here. That way up. There we go. And that's every one of those plants now, all 10 ready staked for the winter months. Well, this platform area here is quite important to me. I'm going to make sure that it's clear of all this foliage, and then I'm going to move one of these compost bins that I use up onto this higher level and get all this compost into it. And whilst I'm doing that, I'm going to feed it, because this is the compost that I've regenerated and I'm going to be using again next season. The potatoes in it this year have been really good, and it's its second year, so I'm hoping that the third year will be just as productive if I give it the right amount of feed and attention. So I'm going to clear a bit of space and then get into this foliage. Now these 4 remaining pots, I'm going to keep those on the go. The potatoes we had out this week have been really good, so there's no reason to do anything other than keep them in these pots. But I'm just going to clear them out of the way while I get this area nice and clear of the foliage. That was good for the old heart, and we've now got the weed fabric cleared off, and this is a really good space because it gets plenty of shelter from these trees and shade, so it's really good growing area for the potatoes. And I tend to keep the compost, which I'm regenerating, here in the winter. So I'm going to get one of these bins over to here and get it up to the end, I think, and that's where my first full compost bin of recycled compost will go. And I'll show you what I do to feed that compost once I get it in place. So that's my first 2 buckets of spent compost gone into this compost bin, and there's about a good 4 inches that I've put on the bottom, and that's going to be the first area that gets fed. So a good couple of handfuls of bloodfish and bone spread around that area. Actually, because it's quite wide at the base, I'm going to make it 3 and probably reduce that to 2 as I get further up the barrel. And then this is all year round potato fertilizer, and I'm going to give a good handful of that as well. So that's the first level, and I'm going to get this rather vicious looking hoe and just mix it in the surface, break it up nicely. Okay, that's in, and then goes the next couple of buckets. Right, get that nice and level, and you probably guessed it, a couple more handfuls of this bloodfish and bone. and another handful of the potato fertilizer, and give that the same sort of mix in to the surface, and so on. So it's a bit of a sandwich all the way up, and I'll add these extras to it, and then I've got a pretty much 3/4 filled compost barrel over there, and I'm going to move the barrel over, put the compost into the barrow, and get all that compost over here and layered and fed in the same way. And I should end up with a good start to next year with 2 pretty full compost bins full of regenerated compost. That's the plan. Well, it's amazing how much soil is in one of these things. I was just looking to see if it says how many litres, but it doesn't. But there's been 7 of those buckets and that huge barrow load, and that wasn't full to the top. So we're going to have a good supply, and I'll get this transported over, set it up and feed it in exactly the same way. And then I need to start thinking about these, and that one's first on my list. Okay, that's that job done. 2 superb full compost bins full of recycled and fed compost. And probably the only thing that I'll do to that between now and when I use it is add some water from time to time with some feed in, and that's likely to be this sort of material that comes from the worm casts, and more commonly known as wormwee. And I'll pop that in now, and just for good measure. Okay, so I'm going to make some space here because I need to tackle that fella, and I think the best way of doing it is getting these worm bins out of the way. And I've got to say, I'm not very good at worm bins, and I think what's in here is going to be reasonably well decomposed, but not perfect. So I'm going to take what is in here, what's good, put it in the wheelbarrow and get it over to that 3rd bin which I've started, and then clear this space and see if we can get to the rotary bin, which, by the way, is broken. I had it secondhand and it's rusted through, and the framework's just started to get to the point where I can hear it crunch and it's going to collapse. So I'm anxious to get out of there what I've been rotating and working to a good compost, and then I'm going to use this shell for growing carrots next year. So let's have a look in here. Right, so right away I've got some fairly still structured foliage of various things I've put in here, and I'm just going to put this on a pile. There's quite a lot of potato peelings in there, and that's not good news for the compost bin. So I really don't think that much of this surface is of use. So I'm just going to clear it out. And the pile that I'm throwing it onto will start another compost heap, which I'm going to put in a different bin. Now, as I get down, there's lots and lots of worms in here, which is what you'd expect from a worm bin. And I'm going to use those worms. I'm going to put some on top of those 2 new compost bins and the rest into this first one. And those worms will work their way through those compost heaps and still make sure that there's lots of worm casts in it, which is good news. So this fella is going in the barrel. There we go. and I'll be able to move these bins relatively easy. And this wormwee is all good stuff and is not going to waste. Messy and a bit pongy, but all good stuff. Okay, so that gets the first one out of the way. And now we're going to get into this tiered one, which is a lot better actually. Nothing that's really very structured. I'll put that in. Get all the goodness out of it. This is not a job for the faint-hearted because there's a fair degree of odour. Not too much I have to say in this, which is very well decomposed. And I'll set these up again for the winter months. This second layer looks just as good. That's that one. And the third one, again, pretty good. And lots of material on the bottom. Get rid of that branch. There we go. And the fourth one. It gets wetter the further down you go. And then finally on this one, you've got a layer of slurry, which is all good. Okay, there we go. So that'll get those out of the way, and I now go and transfer that into those 3 bins. Okay, well I absolutely know this is going to be an effort, so I'm going to clear some space. Now, I don't think I'm going to be able to stand this up, and I need to get that top off of there. As you can see, it's really very rickety. So let's see if I can undo it, and the soil will no doubt fall down onto the surface. No. So I think it's going to go over on its side. Yep, that was more successful. Right. Now, if I can get this off somehow. It's a real job. I wonder if I can stand it up. No. Right. See if I can turn it on its side again. That's a real struggle. Success. Right. Well, there's plenty of good stuff in there, so I'm going to get that transferred into the barrow and we'll add that to the bins. There we go, that'll do for today. This rather large compost bin has got a good third full now, and these two have just been topped off with that worm compost, and that's a good day's work. I do hope you enjoyed the video today. If you did, click the subscribe button, click the like button, and if you want updates from me each time I upload a video, click the bell and select all. I do hope you have a great day. Diolch yn fawr.